Hello everyone. In this video I would like to share some of my thoughts about the current US foreign policy. First of all, this video is dedicated for those who are familiar with the basic knowledge about the US economy, politics and the US military. Secondly, I am glad that Trump won the presidential elections, but he is not the savior as many portray him to be. With the limited choices for the voters, he is just a lesser evil compared to Hillary. I am tired of political commentators who constantly tell the public what they want to hear, ignoring the facts and the true situation about the position of the United States on the global arena, about how strong and independent the United States is, and how great Trump's foreign policy really is toward China, Europe and the rest of the world. I will nail it in this video, using the most simplified language, allowing everyone to understand how naive they are about the US unshaken position on the international arena, and how US President Donald Trump continues the agenda of our international masters, which we may hear about only in so-called conspiracy theories. If there is anyone who claims President Donald Trump is doing a great job for America, just show him this video. I had a discussion about this subject with my friend from far away, whose name I cannot mention in this video without his permission, and whose opinion I highly respect. The discussion was tense, but in the end we came to the same conclusion about what Trump is doing and the possible global impact of his decisions. President Trump is destabilizing peace on our planet between the West and East, turning almost the entire world against America, and is speeding up the collapse of the US dollar. His policy is pushing the United States into isolation, which at the first sight is not a bad thing for the United States as a country, because America is able to survive being self-sufficient. The change won't be easy. It will be a very painful economic process to digest, especially for American dollar, which will definitely lose the status of the international resource trade currency as a petrodollar. And since the US dollar is already sentenced for at least last 20 years to a death sentence on the international market, and is currently artificially held within value by mutual agreement and tolerance between Europe, United States, and major countries in Asia and in the Middle East, the collapse of the US dollar is just a matter of time. But President Trump is speeding up this process, as well as speeding up the destabilization of the world peace, which is not so clearly visible for everyone. Trump is breaking, or more like backing off, from many unfair trade deals, same as he is withdrawing America from international deals which were designed to hold the economic and military balance between the so-called Western and the Eastern world, ignoring the fact that the whole world was tolerating the privileged position of the US dollar, where in very simplified language America was trading a toilet paper in form of US dollar in exchange for a real physical goods and resources from all over the world. And all of this happened while the world was relatively politically and economically stabilized, when we were living in a symbiosis, when everyone was developing and profiting on a global scale from this mutual cooperation, which was not always fair, but was allowing this system to function. And this is the major profit for all of us, because this world suicidal economic system hasn't collapsed yet, even though it should have long ago. This cooperation with the United States is so necessary for some countries to the point where, for example, China was forced to keep buying the US debt, so the US dollar could remain in position of purchasing power, so that American citizens could continue buying Chinese goods on a mass scale. In even more simple words, it's like China would be saying, I will buy your debt so you can continue living on a credit, continuing your way of life, and continue buying all the goodies from me, so my economy will continue to prosper, and our Chinese government position of power will be secured. This is how ridiculous and unfair some of those trade deals currently are in our world economy. And the United States is in the most privileged position on earth and should be grateful for it, and not putting everything at stake because of a few unfair trade deals. From perspective of President Donald Trump, the fact that American dollar and American way of life is still possible is very unfair for the rest of the world. For example, here in Poland, we work like ants, many more hours than a typical American, and we earn on average around $460 a month. Sure, life is cheaper here, but Polish people would also like to enjoy traveling around the world and having a decent pay for the hard work they do. That's why so many Polish people migrate to the West. But the point is, before President Trump started making demands, everything was working. US could just sit quiet and continue to profit from this privileged position, where Americans may basically and endlessly increase their world's largest debt. And it can continue to work. But now this mutual tolerance and agreements are in danger, because Trump is pushing a hostile policy toward China and the rest of the world, asking for more, while they already have everything, definitely more than they deserve. He is pushing them, insulting them, while the world is tolerating the privileged position of the United States. So why is Trump attacking the rest of the world? Why is he trying to blackmail some countries? And how does he do that? There are two possible reasons why Trump is doing this. First is that he is not so smart as majority shapes him to be, which means he is overconfident about American ruling position and that America can do whatever it wants without caring about any consequences, which is obviously a fatal error, which I will explain further in this video. Second reason is because the second possible reason is because Trump is trying to speed up the realization of the plan, which we may hear about in those so-called conspiracy theories, where the international banking ruling elite wants the destabilization of the West and a war as a final outcome. It is visible by what they do in Europe with migrants and in the Middle East, in Syria by using Americans for interest of the Israel, and the promotion of hate against Iran and hostility towards Russia. So why would they want a war? Because they know, same as many of us, that collapse of the US dollar is something to be expected. There are huge economic bubbles in America, Canada, China, Europe. Pretty much the whole world economic system functions on a credit, which is controlled and regulated by the international banking system. When those bubbles explode, the banking system will lose influence and power, a lot of it. And without those banks, they will lose control over our Western nations. Probably because some radicals or right-minded people will reach power in our countries and will attempt to restore a healthy economy which will reject the debt slavery system and which as an outcome will free their countries from the international banking system. The time after the collapse is the best time for the radicals and other people to reach the positions of power. So, those behind the king's throne cannot allow for this to happen. They want to perform a controlled demolition of the West and East by provoking a war between them. The West and the East will destroy each other and a new super-state will be created in the Middle East, which will completely enslave the nations of the West. At least that's what some chosen people believe in. Of course, I could be talking for hours about this to a point where we will reach a complete irrationality in their logic about the vision of chosen people who control the international banking system and their prophecy and of a greater state of Israel and the third temple, which are to be created, rebuilt after what they call the Great War, which basically means a world war. I'm not making this up, I'm just mentioning those prophecies. And most of the chosen people knows about it, especially those who are Zionists. But still, this is just a part of a theoretical explanation of why they would want to perform a controlled demolition of the West. I suggest to do some more research on those subjects, about who controls the banks and what their prophecies and beliefs really are. But back to the subject. It does not even matter if Trump is simply that incompetent or if he's following the agenda of the chosen people, because the outcome of his current policy will be the same. It leads us all into a world conflict where America, same like most of the Western world, will end up in ruins. So, how will it happen? Our red-pilled political commentators claim that America can afford isolationism, and Trump is in a position where he may make demands from all other countries on the planet to fall on their knees and accept US arrogant conditions because nobody will dare to do anything about it because of the United States military superiority, which is also a myth, by the way, and I will explain why. I mean, it's not a myth in the numbers, but in reality, it's two different stories. As I mentioned before, yes, America may survive in isolation because of resource self-sufficiency. And even after the collapse of the US dollar, with time economy will fix itself up. But only under one condition. United States of America is the only existing country on our planet. And why is that? Because there are giant powerful countries outside the continent of North America, which are deadly addicted to trade with the United States and the value of the US dollar, and will not survive, nor will they allow America to survive if America decides to shut the doors for those outside who will be sentenced for economic debt of their own countries. The countries in Asia, for example China, will not allow themselves to die peacefully nor they will allow themselves to bow in front of America. They won't die without taking the rest of the world to grave with them, and China won't be left alone in this situation, so China will gain lots of friends. After all, America will own money to many countries outside the continent. The symbiosis between the United States and the countries in the East created a deadly addiction for the rest of the world. And the United States wants to back away from those addicts, leaving them on their own without supplies of the drugs. In simple words, the rest of the world cannot survive economically without America. So America cannot simply shut the doors and ignore and sentence the rest of the world to economic debt without facing terrible consequences. If America sentenced countries like China to economic starvation, it's a matter of time before radicals will take power, either peacefully or by starting another revolution. And those radicals will point fingers at America as the one guilty for the misery of their country. It is similar to what North Korea does. All the bad luck is always the Americans' fault. But in this scenario, it will be actually true. They will have every reason to blame United States for their misery. So, what can China do to counter Trump's arrogant, hostile economic policy toward China? Ignoring small actions against the US economy, which China already does, which sends Trump a message like, "Don't fuck with us, calm down, Trump, and let's talk. The damage done can be reversed. So regain your senses and stop attacking our economy." But if this mutual teasing won't work, China may use a final card in the economic war, which is obviously the fact that China holds the largest part of the US debt. So they may be like, okay, Trump, enough is enough. You are being too big of an asshole to us, and we are tired of it. We won't fall on knees in front of America, even if our mutual surviving depends on that. And you probably don't even realize how you are destroying your own country by destroying us. So, one more chance. You either remove all trade restrictions or pay up. Pay up, America. Pay your debts. And no more tolerance on economic field for US privileged position. We have means to overthrow US dollar from position of international resource trade currency. And we have every right to demand the United States to pay their debts. This will be the final nail in the coffin for the US dollar on the international market. Of course, America won't be able to pay. This will cause a mass panic on the investors' market, and the final outcome, the US dollar will become a real toilet paper in value. There are so many US dollars around the world flooding the markets, and nobody will want them anymore, because the whole trust of investors, shareholders, to America will be lost. Not to mention that all the people who owns those US dollars will feel like they've been used, lied to, cheated. I will help you understand this by using a simple example. Imagine you own a shop and your favorite client constantly buys from you on a credit, and you constantly allow him to do that because other traders in the area are also accepting this credit deal with that favorite customer. They all accept his borrowed money as a means of accepted exchange deal between each other. Accepted exchange deal, that's what I mean. But one day your favorite customer turns out to be an annoying, unreliable asshole. So you finally tell him, "That's it, no more living on a credit, pay up." And he won't be able to pay you. So what do you do in such situation? Obviously your favorite customer will lose his credibility in eyes of all the traders to whom he also owes money to, which will cause a little panic on the local market, And in normal life situation, such broken person will be forced to give away whatever he owns to the traders. Or if he refuses, the traders sends police or thugs after him to force him to pay his bills or to force him for any recompensation. But in case of a situation with the United States and the rest of the Western world, the rest of the whole world, the US President Trump plans to completely ignore the rest of the world because he believes America is able to afford it thanks to self-sufficiency in resources and thanks to military power. This is one of the dumbest theory which I heard from many political commentators on YouTube. This is so naive, so foolish on every possible level. But okay, we will get to this. We will explain all of this to the core. Also, it's worth to mention that the US is also destroying all the remaining trust in the eyes of European countries, ignoring the fact that Trump betrayed and sold Poland to the chosen people, and I made a video about this subject which is in limited access status. The link is available in the description below, by the way. Trump also tells Europe to pay more for US protection. You all must know that one of the main reasons why Europe is tolerating US arrogance in their economic position is the fact that the US provides protection for Europe. I mean, this is the official version. Well, unofficial, but it's very official. You get the point. After all, most Western countries are just satellite puppet states for America, especially my country Poland acts as such. So now when Trump demands Europe to pay more into NATO, he is exposing this tolerance at the risk of breaking and is pushing Europe to position of siding with countries like China, for example. So let's say Trump continues doing what he does, and America shows middle finger to the rest of the world, especially China, ignoring the destruction of the US dollar. China will start economic starvation because European market will never exchange needs of American market for the needs of the Chinese export. Ignoring the disastrous situation in the whole world, such scenario as bankruptcy of the United States and policy of isolationism will lead countries like China into mass unemployment, which will become a threat for the party ruling elite. So, obviously, in order to stabilize the situation in their own countries, or to prevent destabilization in their countries, they will turn into aggression, pushing for war, some type of retaliation, by blaming America for destroying our global economy. If not, the current Chinese ruling government is going to, if not the current Chinese ruling government is going to do that, then those radicals who will take over definitely will. You must understand the current Chinese government position here. They are proud, stubborn, and they cannot bow. They cannot show weakness, submission to the United States. If they do that, it will mean that the Chinese ruling elite will be quickly exchanged by those who will claim they will never bow to America. It's a matter of honor of some type. If economic starvation occurs, they will also end up exchanged. Especially if they refuse to show aggression to America. The only possible way out for Chinese government after they kill the US dollar and to save face and remain in power is to demand from America some form of compensation, which obviously is not going to happen, which will also force China to start some war for resources somehow. And there is plenty of possible areas in the East Asia where there are conflicts, territorial claims, especially with Japan and a few other countries. Some people may ask what type of compensation China would want for remaining in peace with the United States, which decided to isolate themselves. Well, China would start some local wars in East Asia, involving Japan, definitely, Taiwan, South Korea, and they will expect America to not get involved. This will be the price of peace between China and America, to sacrifice those American puppet states in East Asia for China, which, as I said, is not going to happen. America will not allow itself to sacrifice those countries. They simply cannot do that, even if America will be isolating itself from the rest of the world. Now, some people will say that America is a military superpower, and nobody will dare to start any conflict with the United States. First of all, America as a military superpower is a myth, and I will explain exactly why. Well, it's not a myth in numbers, but in reality it's a different story. Second of all, if someone starts war with the United States, it's because of desperation, not because they want to. America holds many puppet states, satellite states, with the US military bases all over the world. It will be hard for the US to abandon the rest of the world and not get involved. Third of all, those countries from the rest of the world sentenced by America for agonizing economic debt will have nothing to lose. The war with America will be the only possible chance and a solution to keep their own countries alive and to keep peoples together. Also, some say that wars solve all economic problems after all. And I'm sure of one thing: countries like China, Russia are stubborn, proud, and will definitely never bow to America. If any of their leaders would even suggest doing that, they would be very quickly overthrown and exchanged by some radicals, as I explained it before. So really, war is the only solution which I may think of for those countries, in case if America will ever decide to completely isolate itself from the rest of the world. And when we're talking about China, Russia, we are talking about countries who own nuclear weapons. America simply cannot afford isolationism. Economically, yes, they can, but politically, no. America cannot allow such countries to die in peace, because they definitely won't go to their grave in peace. They won't lay down in the grave peacefully. So, to those people who claim that American military superiority will simply protect the United States from any attacks from outside. After all, US has a powerful navy, technology, puppet states with the US military bases all over the world. I will debunk all of this right now. Yes, it is a fact that American military is the strongest and the best financed in the world, in quality, technology, but from a strategic perspective, is America really able to defend themselves from the rest of the world? With use of all available weaponry? Definitely not. American army is designed in its design to bully the weak, meaningless states all over the world. States without nuclear weapons or any meaningful military. It's totally different to fight against weak countries in the Middle East who cannot strike back, or to fight against countries like Pakistan, India, Russia, or China. And in this scenario, where America will isolate itself, America might be forced to fight against China and Russia, who will be and allies. Not because they love each other, but because of situation. Why? Because officially Russia and US are cold to each other, except the fact that American propaganda portrays Russia as the worst devils on earth and who manipulate everybody and do all the bad things in the US. Russia managed to sabotage plans of the US in the Middle East. Russia stood for Syrian government, preventing further escalation and involvement of Iran into conflict. So Russia definitely serves currently as a guardian of peace in the Middle East, because if Iran will be under attack, Saudis will join Israel and the rest, and there will be a hellstorm in the Middle East, which will also lead into a World War III. But because of Russian intervention, neither US nor Israel will dare to finish off Syria and strike at Iran without involving Russia into the war in process. So, in this scenario where the whole world will struggle with economic starvation, Russia won't be able to remain neutral and will be forced to take sides. Otherwise, Russia also risks an invasion from China, because China has appetite on Russian resources, and this appetite will rise if the US dollar will collapse, and if the US will decide to isolate itself. So Russia will have a choice: to stand with China against America, or accept the risk of being invaded by an enormous land army from China. Note that China and Russia together have a superior manpower, larger industry, secured supplies of resources, and better starting strategic position in case of war than America. They might consume South Korea, US military bases in the Middle East, and almost all of Europe because of the land connection, supply roads by land, and they might also bomb to rubble all military installations, air bases in Taiwan, Japan, England in a matter of minutes, and those are facts. So let's analyze step by step all major possible allies of the US and the true strength of the US army in case of war against Russia and China. Obviously there will be many more countries involved from Middle East and even Africa, but those are less important since they do not have a large size regular armies nor any weapons of mass destruction, which are the worst threat to the US mainland security. First, about strategic position of Russia and China compared to United States in North America. Hopefully Europe will regain some sanity and will try to remain neutral by expelling American forces from European soil. Complete neutrality is the only chance for European countries to use if we want to avoid destruction and casualties on European soil. Why? Because European countries just don't stand a chance against invading forces from the east. But as always, Europe will most likely get involved because we are the first retards to provoke conflict and to fight. Whole of Europe is in range of short and long-range missiles which might be launched from Russia territory and reach targets anywhere in Europe in a matter of minutes. What does this mean? Most of our planes, tanks, land forces or navy won't even make it to leave their military bases before missiles will completely destroy those objects, their bases, their ports. Russia is able to launch thousands of missiles, planes, which will destroy most of European forces in the first minutes after the start of the war, especially if the tactical nuclear weapon is involved. This is how real war between superstates looks like, not from what you see on television about war in the Middle East. And I'm not even saying they will use nuclear weapons against those targets in the Central Europe, but they might use nuclear weapons as a response to the nuclear attack on Russia which might come from France and United Kingdom. Here is a very confusing situation. either all will use nuclear weapons as fast possible as a first strike attack, which will destroy West and East, because Russia and China together will hold superior nuclear arsenal compared to the entire Western arsenal combined, and because they have a bit better strategic position, especially Russia in case of a nuclear war. The industry and populated areas are very decentralized. You have three major regions in Russia, which are East, Center and West. All of them would have to be attacked at the same time and completely destroyed to win against Russia, assuming there will be any victory in such war, or maybe only survivals will remain. But let's look at the scenario where Russia, China, US and Europe will stick to use of a conventional army only without using the nuclear weapons upon the first strike, which is a bit unrealistic in my opinion. Advantage of American strategic position is that they have it easier to defend themselves from the land invasion, which may come from the north, from the side of Alaska, or from the south, from Mexico. The main disadvantage is that America has lots of allies, puppet states, military bases all over the world, which are in fact an easy snack for the land forces of Russia and China to swallow. First of all, those bases have a potential, if they stand there, only to launch some bombing attacks, some missiles on territory of Russia and China. But except that, the forces which station in those bases are almost defenseless against attack of massive land and air forces from Russian and China territory, which might come by land in a matter of days, and there won't be enough US troops there and supplies to stop those invading forces, to even survive the first bombardments of those installations. The presence of the military bases in those US satellite countries are just symbolic. Every person who understands the technology and the reality of modern warfare with enormous armies like American, Chinese or Russian will know this is true. Those enclaves, American enclaves in the other part of the world, don't stand a chance against land invasion. Also, American land forces technological superiority, it won't matter much. A Russian tank from 80s is able to knock out any modern American tank on a one shot. If it comes to modern tanks, and the modern tank battle, I mean a realistic one, it's almost always about who fires at who first. And if you fire first and hit, you pretty much destroy the enemy tank. This is how the modern tanks works like. And the tanks from 80s are considered still a modern tanks, with the modern designs of shell and everything. I mean, obviously in performance, American tanks or planes have an advantage against most of the Russian and Chinese constructions, but there is not any radical difference between the technology, so it goes all to numbers. In a fight one-on-one, one against one, American constructions would have an advantage while fighting typical Russian or a Chinese plane or a tank, but there will be thousands of Chinese and Russian planes, tanks, combined forces attacking on the entire line from the mainland against US outposts, bases, task forces, supported by a few dozens, maybe hundreds of planes and tanks which station there, which must survive first the mass artillery and missile bombardment. Those American enclaves located far away from US soil, in Europe, in Asia, do not stand a chance. They might hang on by a miracle for a while, few days maybe, but from a strategic point of view, they are just a meat shield, from propaganda purpose. But strategically they are in a lost position. They will be quickly, if not instantly, cut off from supplies, reinforcements, sentenced to death. There are two purposes of such bases. in the other part of the world. One is for pure propaganda purpose, well, actually three. Second will be political, and the third one, if you have a missile silos over there or some way to launch missiles on enemy territory, but while being close to the border of that enemy territory, then yes, those bases have a purpose, but it's a one-shot weapon which will be sacrificed, because as soon the enemy will retaliate on those bases don't stand a chance of surviving. If someone needs an example to understand this better, look what America did with Iraqi army. How did they bomb them to the ground, defeating them so quickly without almost any casualties? Why? Because regular Iraqi army had no real means to defend themselves against overwhelming mass air attack, same as those US military bases in Asia, Europe and in the Middle East will not stand a chance against overwhelming numbers of missiles, artillery and planes which will strike at them in the first minutes after the start of the war. Russia has currently the world's best strategic ballistic and cruise missile technology in mass production, and it is not even a war state economy. Those missiles and all the components are completely produced on Russian territory only. Those missiles are able to deliver any explosive warhead at the front doors of a White House, and there is almost no mean to intercept them. Actually, officially there is none. It was already tested by Russians, and there was even official US response to this, and the US response to this technology was that America going to attack first. This is the official response of US General Staff on this technology. This is crazy, but no comments on that. The newest Russian cruise missile is a superior weapon, much cheaper than American counterparts, with a superior range and maneuverability, with a little sacrifice of accuracy, which in case of a war will very quickly outnumber the US arsenal of similar missiles, especially thanks to Chinese industry. And it's worth to mention that those Russian cruise missiles may work completely based on programmed calculated waypoint tracking system, which means they can be independent. They don't need a satellite to navigate. They will just follow the programmed way guided by the computer data of a current missile speed and starting position. When Russia possesses such weapons, no military base is safe anywhere in the world. They may deliver nuclear warhead in those missiles to any target anywhere, and there is no way to intercept those missiles. Some people may not really know what those cruise missiles are. Well, they are exactly the same type of missiles like a Tomahawk missiles which were used in Iraq, Libya, Syria. The difference is that Russia has no need to send ships to the US coast, because they can launch those missiles from the Russian territory to any target in America. So yes, USA is safe and strong in North America, relatively safe, but they won't be able to protect their friends or hold their bases in Europe or East Asia. Some people may ask, what about this, what is visible right now on the picture? American Navy, aircraft carriers, and the rest of the fleet. First of all, aircraft carriers, almost all big ships in the Navy, are an easy targets, easy to detect, easy to target, and to sink, thanks to a modern technology which Russia and China obviously possess. Secondly, controlling the seas and oceans by using the Navy is an outdated strategy, because every sane modern country who is preparing for a full-scale war will use ballistic, naval and cruise missiles to destroy any ship from the mainland which floats on the water surface. If you want to control the waters, you need air superiority, and an entire fleet, if groups, might be destroyed by one cruise missile or a ballistic missile with a nuclear warhead. About air superiority, it is physically not possible to obtain air superiority from aircraft carriers when you're facing shores of the mainland of countries like Russia or China. First of all, aircraft carriers cannot win against 2 or 3 air bases on the land, and China and Russia has almost 3 times larger air forces than entire US air forces. So there is no match. And even if by some magic Russia and China won't be using nuclear weapons in this war, China and Russia is able to launch swarms and enormous numbers of missiles on any targets on the water, on really long range from the shores of the land, which means that even without nuclear warhead, there will be so many missiles targeting aircraft carriers and other ships of US on the waters that they won't be able to defend themselves against them, so they will end up sunk. There is no possibility for the fleet to survive against modern air attack by either a massive number of planes or missiles. The US fleets, which I already mentioned as the task forces, won't be able to control the oceans and the seas, not because Russian and Chinese Navy's superiority, but because of those missiles and overwhelming number of Russian and Chinese air forces which will operate from the mainland of Asia and Europe. And so there will be probably no possibility for the US to supply, even by transport ships, to the Europe or Middle East or even Japan, because those areas will be under the control of the air forces and in range of the missiles from China and Russia. I don't see physical possibility for US to wage war, I mean the world war, against Russia and China outside North America. It's not really possible. The numbers, the advantage in numbers of Russian and Chinese equipment, manpower is overwhelming, and the technology is matching with the US if it comes to missile technology. Actually, in case of Russia, it's superior, so really. And as one more proof to what I'm saying, 2 days ago there was this article. You may check it in Google. So there are other peoples who are also concluding the same ideas already about possible conflict between US and Russia and China combined. So the American Navy won't even be able to get close to the shores of Europe and Asia, or they will expose themselves to attacks from the air and from underwater also. Russians also have a superior technology of anti-ship missiles, naval missiles, which hold range, accuracy and destructive power. They are also cheap in production on the Russian standards. They are able to eliminate entire fleets at once, especially if used with a tactical nuclear weapon. This is also something to consider. Naval and cruise missiles are 2 different things, but they share some features in common. For example, those modern Russian cruise missiles and naval missiles too are able to target any ship on the surface of the water by heading at the target 10 up to 15 meters above the water level, which means it's below even the ship defensive system detection and even below the angle of the ship defensive system. It's above the water level, but below the most of the ship decks line, if I can say it this way. I don't know if I'm getting this, if I'm explaining this clear enough. Also, we have seen it's easy to send task forces to the shores of the Middle East and bully, attack the weak countries from air by planes and missiles. But what if your enemy has a technology and a large numbers of missiles and planes which he may direct at you? Even if aircraft carriers get close enough to shores of East Asia, they will be quickly targeted by enemy air fleets which will be dispatched in a large number from the land, and aircraft carrier cannot compete with the bases located on land, as I said. A ship worth billions of dollars with all the planes on board and crew will end up completely destroyed in a matter of minutes. Aircraft carriers are effective when you use them against the weak and by surprise, and they have a good propaganda purpose. Blinding people to believe in some type of a naval superiority because they look good in the pictures. In practice, it's a different story why waging a war against equal opponents. This is how much aircraft carriers are worth nowadays. It's an outdated technology. While you deal with enemies from your own league. In the conventional war, without any doubt, Russia and China will secure the areas of Europe, East Asia, and half of Middle East, and possibly Africa, because Chinese influence, and America won't really have much to counter them except the nuclear arsenal, which they also possess in much larger numbers. I repeat again, China and Russia combined have a superior manpower, industry. Especially in the event of a war, they will also have a secured supply routes by land and a natural resources thanks to Russia, and thanks to whatever lands they will annex in the process of war. How the United States can possibly win a conventional war? And we are talking about a situation where America is the one promoting isolationism and provoking them with this to start this war for survival, as I explained it before. But so yes, I don't know how America could possibly win. There is no possibility. They can defend themselves, stay on defense on their continent, but again, the nuclear weapons and the ballistic missiles, and of course the Russia and China also has the advantage. Also, it's worth to mention here, if you fire ballistic missiles with the nuclear warheads on America, it's much... America has a concentration of industry and cities in a specific regions, areas. So it's easier to concentrate the fire with the ballistic missiles on those points. In case of China, yes, it's similar situation. America will have easier to target those objects in China, but in case of Russia, it's not the case. In case of Russia, it's a very wide area divided into regions, and those regions, the industry and all those things, they are decentralized very much. So America will have to cover much larger area with the nuclear weapons, with the ballistic missile, much larger area, while having much lesser arsenal. While in case of China and Russia, it will be large arsenal which will be concentrated on the targets on much smaller area. So the destruction will be much bigger than it will be in Asia and in Europe. Yes, America would have too many targets to target, and they have much lesser arsenal compared to Russia. So it's pretty much easy to conclude what the outcome will be. But there is another option. What if it's actually true and nuclear war will be pretty much the end of the world? it is a possibility, but the power of the nuclear weapons is overestimated. It's not really so much destructive to the world as the media and people say it is. So the scenario, which I explained before, is in case of the conventional war, which probably will never take place because US doctrine is very clear on this, and it's all about the use of the nuclear weapons, which will ultimately lead to destruction of both sides in the conflict. So I really don't understand the argument where people say that nobody will dare to fuck with America. Why, in matter of fact, it's they both pointing guns at each other, and they can be in the same position saying like nobody will fuck with us because we can do same or even more to you if you will put pressure on us. America is not in position to force any conditions on anyone like Russia or China. They are on equal position if it comes to a world war. So yeah, the argument nobody will dare to oppose America is complete nonsense. Until America is not this type of a suicidal maniac who is like what's the name in English? Where there are like two drivers in separate cars and they drive straight on each other, and one is hoping that another will turn before they crash. I don't remember the name for this, but maybe the Trump is really counting on this. But if it's true, then it's a very dangerous game. And anyway, being realistic, Trump will not get re-elected again. So 2 more years of presidency, and that's all. Trump will be gone. And about the nuclear war, some people say that the nuclear war will lead to a global annihilation. It's not really accurate. It's possible, but unlikely. The nuclear weapons are being demonized, but they don't have as much of a destructive power as the media portray them to have. If someone would like me to make a detailed analysis of certain military or possible war, let me know in the comments below. So I will think about it, but it will take me lots of work. Assuming you agree so far with how I'm analyzing the possible conflict between Russia, China and America. I have knowledge on this because of my past, but never mind about that. So President Trump, by doing what he does, he's leading this world into a world conflict, maybe intentionally, assuming we will decide to trust the claims from so-called conspiracy theories, or unintentionally, and simply by being incompetent and making enemies all over the world, expecting others to fall on their knees before America, completely ignoring their national pride in their political situation, which is crazy if it's true. It's in US best interest to stabilize the leading position of current Chinese government, same as the current world economy, and it's not going to happen if Trump will continue the economic war with China. There are irrational, crazy people out there in positions of power, and they are able to do stupid things to the rest of the world if they will end up cornered by Trump, like a scared animal in the corner will go into act of desperation. And based on what I was saying before, Russia acts as a peacekeeper who stands on guard in Syria and ruins the plans for the globalists to destroy Iran. Some people may ask if they, the chosen people, Zionists from conspiracy theories, want World War III. Why why they won't continue to provoking Russia right now, and why they have opportunity. It's in their best. It's their best opportunity right now to start global conflict if they will continue bombing Syria and other things like that, while Russia is over there as a peacekeeper. First of all, if you want a world war and you are an influential country such as Israel, it's not really that difficult to start such war by even organizing a proper false flag operation. But before the so-called Great War will start in Europe, East Asia and North America, Israel must secure his strategic position in the Middle East, because when the war will take place in the North, East and West, they will be almost completely alone, surrounded by enemies in the Middle East. So they must use America now to destroy organization and the true strength of those enemies. They must destroy their regular armies, overthrow governance which will prepare those countries to be easily conquered by Israeli army, while the main battlefields of the Great War will be taking place in the other parts of the world. They need to eliminate Iran because it's the last and only country in the Middle East which is a serious threat to Israel, and Iran is able to unite Islamic countries in the region, invade and conquer Israel, or at least do serious casualties to the Israeli civilian population, while the US army will be not able to provide protection for Israel, because in case of a world war, the US will be busy waging wars elsewhere. You understand the logic here? The Iran must be eliminated before the world war will start. This is the logic approach to this. Especially if you want to secure for yourself the Middle East, the Iran must be gone. For all those who disagree with what was said in this video, go ahead, debunk me with your own arguments and theories, I dare you. So, I guess this video completely explains why Trump is not our guy. Because he does not act like one. He pretends he does, but major decisions and direction of his international policy remains the same as those who started using it before him. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I just really shared my own thoughts in this video. I know some might be very chaotic, some people might not be able to follow all the logic here of my everything what I explain here without knowing certain informations. I guess that will be all for this video. Just let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really trying to be transparent here with my thoughts with the public. Or reporting out.